Okay, I will, we're gonna just start, and what is, I know the order is not the same on everybody's computer, but we're gonna start in our upper left corner and go around, and then we'll change the process by which we ask the question each time. Marisa, we'll start with you. Just maybe let viewers know why you're running for library board.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I'm Marisa Hossick, and I'm a Bend native, grew up here. My husband grew up here. Our families are here, and I'm running for library board because I love reading, I love books, and it's a great time for me to get involved in the community and leadership in this way. And it's just the time was right. So I thought I would throw my hat in the ring and see if I could do something good for our community.
Great. Cynthia?
Yes, I'm Cynthia Claridge. I have lived in Redmond since 1979, so I've been here for over 40 years. I have served on the library board. I'm running for re-election. I first went on the library board in 2017 or 2018, sorry about that. And the reason I'm running again is because I also believe in the importance of libraries, and I believe in the direction that the library board has been going for the last several years, and I'd like to see us continue with that. Anyway.
Great. Ray?
Yeah, I've got a little bit longer. I prepared a 3-minute opener. Is that okay?
That sounds fine.
Great. So my name is Ray Miao, and I love libraries. That's why I helped found our library system back in 1998. I've had the honor to be elected to serve on the board ever since. I was appointed to the board in 98, elected in 99, and I've been reelected 5 times. I served as president of the board at least 10 times, and I'm running for re-election again because I believe that libraries build communities, and that community libraries are one of the best ways to do that. I'm very proud of the progress the library system made during my tenure on the board. We took the library system from one where all the libraries were closed because of county-wide budget cuts to one of the best systems in Oregon, and that comes from the Oregon State Library. We've kept up with tremendous growth in Bend and the county by building 3 libraries, La Pine, Sisters, and Downtown Bend, and remodeling 2, the Sun River and Redmond libraries, and opening up East Bend, which has turned out to be our most used per square foot, most popular library in the entire system. And this expansion of the community library system put library sources within a short drive, walk, or a bike ride for most of the people in the county. And that expansion was accompanied by broadening our services as well. So we now have children's early learning centers in every one of our libraries. And those programs are really recognized statewide. We're also changing with the times, providing free public access computers in all our libraries. And we're building and expanding our digital libraries, ebooks, downloadable audiobooks, streaming videos. So our library card holders can access our services at home, at school, at work, and for me, when you're on vacation somewhere, which is great. But sadly, in recent years, the library board has been moving from its commitment to community libraries, focusing instead on the development of one huge central library. And it's no secret that I've consistently opposed that direction. And I intend to continue to use my voice in the community to champion community libraries. I know from my experience that local community libraries connect people in concrete and meaningful ways. And I agree with the American Library Association that one of the principal roles of libraries is to build strong communities. And one of the best ways to do that is through community libraries. That's my vision for Bend and for our libraries. That's why I'm running for re-election on the board. I'm proud to have made our library system a vital and responsive part of the community. And I want to carry on that work so we can really build strong libraries and strong communities. That's why I'm running for re-election. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Ray.
Ray. So the next question we have really is sort of in the vein of what Ray just talked about. We wanted to hear each of your visions for the library and what your role in that is. So on this one, we'll start with Cynthia.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I believe that we are a library district with community libraries. Almost every single community in Deschutes County has a library. And the few areas in the county that are not able to have libraries we have outreach posts, we have vans that are able to go out into the county. And so I believe that actually the board does believe in the idea of community libraries and has created that. When we're done building and remodeling, we will have 7 libraries in Deschutes County. Sun River, Lapine, Sisters, Redmond will all have their own library. Bend will have 3 libraries. Bend will have the Central Library, the East Bend Library, and the Downtown Library. So I do agree with Ray. I agree that we need to have community libraries. I think that's the direction that the board has been going, and I think that's exactly what the board wants to have. As far as, I think part of your question was for the future, how I see the future of the library. Yeah. So most definitely to continue with the vein of what we're doing right now. And one of the things I believe in is that one of the reasons that we needed the central library is because we need to have kind of a hub, a central space, so that we have more of our books in one place, that we have our automated system in one place to get the services and to get the materials back out to the people as quickly as possible. So I am a true believer in the concept of the central library. One of the misconceptions that's been sent out there is that we're going to have this huge meeting space in the central library. Actually, the meeting space that's going to be in the Redmond Library is actually going to be larger than the one that's going to be it's being designed right now for the central library, which is going to be located on Stevens Ranch. As far as, we need to continue with the vein of making sure that technology is available to people. All the programs that the library system provides right now are so integral to the making sure that the community has access to material, has access to services and programs that are available. So that's basically why I'm running, because I want to continue with what we've been doing so far.
Thanks. Ray, maybe your vision, I think it was fairly well communicated in your intro, but maybe you have any additional points on your vision.
On the vision itself or future of libraries?
On your vision for the library and what your role in that is.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about why I really joined the library. I was state president of AARP for quite a while. And when I was that, I advocated at both the state and national level for livable communities. That's my true passion. And I'm happy to say that at the national level now, because some of the work that I've done, the national AARP has made livable communities one of their major goals. I worked for the library because I saw libraries as one of the institutions that can really help build livable communities. People love their library. Local community libraries really build essentially neighborhoods. People want to be able to get to the library easily, safely, and go when they want, get the services they want. A neighborhood community library really forms one of the hearts of a neighborhood. It does a lot of things. It means fewer miles traveled by car. It addresses one of the major concerns, which is the environment. How do we reduce our carbon footprint? I mean, the library can contribute to that through neighborhood libraries. People are, after the pandemic, we've seen that there's a lot of what we call mental distress. emotional distress, especially among young kids. The internet, the pandemic rather, has really brought the future into today. People are, they're reading ebooks, they're using downloadable audiobooks. It's the second largest circulating library in our system. And people are Zooming. We're doing Zoom, right? When it works.
Right.
People meet differently. The problem with technology is we don't have real physical contact. When I was advocating for liberal communities, we found one of the major reasons, or one of the major factors for healthy aging, and that's at every age, is a connection to your community, but a physical connection. We found in the last couple of years with the pandemic, it's not everything. Seeing you and talking with you is not the same as sharing a cup of coffee with you. Community libraries are perfectly situated to do that.
Yeah, we're getting close to we're trending toward long answers. And in the interest of time, I want to move on to Marisa and ask her about her vision for the library and what she thinks her role in that is.
Thanks, Nicole. I am a mom. I'm raising two boys who are in elementary school and middle school, and I've raised them to be readers and be curious about the world and grow up with integrity and empathy. And I think that the library serves as just a really wonderful place to help engage your children in those, especially in curiosity. You know, go through the books. What jumps out at you? What do you want to learn more of? I'm a really avid user of the library, and I agree with both Cynthia and Ray. They really are very important to communities, and I just want to commend both of you for all of the work that you have done and all the accomplishments that your hard work on the board has created for our community. It's I'm in love with our library system. I think it's so fantastic. So just with that said, where I see us going is I think we're in a really great spot in Central Oregon or in Deschutes County. You know, like you mentioned, we do have all those library branches. We have 2 currently in Bend. There's a 3rd in the works. And I love the idea of having a facility that can act as a hub to serve all these other libraries, that has the circulation capabilities to partner with all elementary schools with the Links program, so kids can go to their school library and get books out. I mean, that just really expands the reach of the library and gets into, every school. Not every parent has the time, capability, interest in taking their kids to the library. So this really gets it into their space. Another thing that I'd love to see, because the expanded circulation will be possible with this hub library, would be library kiosks to bring libraries closer to people, closer to walking distance for people. You could check out your book and have it delivered to your local kiosk, check it out, return it there. There'll be mobile libraries that could go to events. So it's just really integrating into the community. And then if you want to have the library experience, you go to any of the 3 branches. We have the downtown branch, which is easily accessible for anywhere in Bend, the east side, which is really loved for people, and then the new Stevens Ranch branch, which is, that is where Bend is really growing. That's where, me as a younger family, we can afford to live, and a lot of the more affordable housing is growing out in that direction. And I just think it's a wonderful amenity to have in Bend, in East Bend, which has generally been, there hasn't been as much focus on building amenities on that side of town. So I think I covered everything.
Thank you, Marisa. Ray, we're going to start with you for this question. Ray, what is the library's role in supporting those with limited resources in our community? And do you believe that the library did the right thing in keeping their facilities closed longer than other facilities during the COVID pandemic?
Good question. First part is, how do we support those without, repeat that first.
Those with limited resources.
By limited resources, you mean money?
Financial, yeah, largely.
Because we also have limited resources in terms of internet access.
Right. You know, and that kind of all goes along with that, I
Right.
believe.
It all goes along with that. And what we've had is, well, I can make suggestions. There are options that we have. There's only so much that a single library building can do. We can have free internet access. We can have free computers. We can have, we could have, if, like other libraries have tried, lending computers, portable computers. We could lend e-readers, Kindles, whoever, doesn't matter. We can lend those out. Along with that, then, we can have mobile hotspots. We put them in a van. They go to a central location in a community, say, you know, Tumalo, parts of Lapine, maybe even parts of Bend. And kids could have access to the internet, high-speed broadband through the library. I mean, those are the things we can do. Technology is changing how we provide our services. The real question is, what services are we going to, do we need to provide in the future? People who don't have resources, one of the main things is, let's talk about it, the houseless. I'm proud of the fact that our libraries could be open as temporary shelters. Now, some libraries have started experimenting with being what we call the 24/7 library. I really like that idea. Any library card holder can have access to every single library 24/7. They can go in there, check out books, browse the stacks, return their books. If they've got a children's library card along with the adult library card, they can have access to our early learning centers. They won't have access to the administrative parts. Certain parts of the library obviously closed off. They've used CCTV to monitor, but this allows people to use the library when they want, which is the ultimate goal for libraries. In the past, we've always used the measure, how many people come into our doors, as a measure of success.
Hey, Ray, let me ask you the second part of that question. Did the library do the right thing in keeping the facilities closed longer than other facilities during COVID?
I really can't say. Health-wise, you know, I have a medical research background. Yeah, the pandemic was real. We needed to isolate. We didn't need to isolate as long as China did. This is totally wrong. We did need to wear masks. Could we have allowed people into the library wearing masks? Yeah, I think we could have. If they had N95 masks, that would have been appropriate. Vaccinated or not, didn't matter. So I think we could have kept it open, but would our staff have felt safe doing that? There's two sides to this equation, our patrons and our staff. And we have to protect both. And I think the library director did go the middle ground and do it correctly. Closed when we had to, open as soon as the state said we could. And I think that was the right thing to do.
Marisa, you're next for this question.
Do you want to repeat?
It's a two-parter. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
What is the library's role in supporting those with limited resources in the community? And the second part of that is, did the library do the right thing in keeping the facilities closed longer than other facilities during the COVID pandemic?
As far as the library's role with people with limited resources, I really think I've always been so impressed with the offerings that the library has for people. Just a few of the things that we use in our house that I know are free for everyone are the audiobooks. I mean, we use those all the time on road trips. They're available for everyone for free. Downloading ebooks, access to computers. I think just on the level of accessibility, the recent move from the Dewey Decimal System to the Wayfinder system, where it's like browsing in a bookshop, so you're finding your books in a more accessibly easier way. I just think it's really a wonderful a resource for the entire community. Library rooms available for study groups, things like that. I think the hub library, the Stevens Ranch Library, is going to even just expand on that so much more. One of the things that I love personally is I love to learn languages, and there's a Mango app that is free for everyone. That's, I think, even better than Duolingo that you can use through the library. And so I just think that all these things, Canopy, essentially Netflix that you can use through the library. There's so many resources. A lot of these do depend on internet connection. And I think that, as we move further along down the road from the pandemic, I think that people have gotten that, or were able to get that together, able to bring internet connection into their homes. If you can't, you can go to the library and use the internet connection and download things to your device if you want. And then as far as the length of time the library was closed for COVID, I'm not really sure if I could speak to that. I had my head down trying to keep my job and teach my kids at the same time during COVID. And yes, we were using the library, but we were using it more in the electronic capacity with audiobooks, trying to keep my kids busy. And yeah, so I was trying to put out a lot of different fires during that time. And I'm not sure that if the library had opened sooner, that would have made my life any easier. So.
Thanks, Marisa. Cynthia, do you want me to repeat the question? You're on, Cynthia, you're on mute. No worries.
Thank you. I forgot about that. No, I don't need you to repeat. As far as what the library does for people who have limited resources, I think that's one of the things that's amazing about the Deschutes Public Library staff. That is something that they bring up and talk about on a regular basis. And I've been so impressed over the years with the various programs that staff members will come up with to try and figure out how they can make sure to get services to people who have limited resources. As I talked about, one of the things I know that they did in starting back during the pandemic was to, or I guess it was as we were coming out of the pandemic, but was to provide services in the mobile vehicles. And those were going out to the houseless camps and making sure that they had books, going to the schools in the summertime or the parks in the summertime to make sure children who were being basically cared for by the Parks and Rec program because their parents were both working. And so those children were having access to books. A couple of other things that both Marisa and Ray kind of touched on are all the different programs that the library offers. And that's all they don't pay for anything. If you need to figure out how to do a small business loan, there's somebody there who can help you with that. If you're writing a resume, there's someone on staff who can help you with that. And so they're always looking for ways to help the entire population of our county. One of the things that we voted for, one of the things that was brought up was a new HVAC system that would go in to deal with smoky skies, because we found so many of the indigent people were actually because of all the smoke with all the fires, they were coming into the library. So then that system allowed them to be in a building that was smoke-free, where they would be able to be safe. As far as the closing the library for the pandemic, I actually think the library staff, they did an amazing job. They did everything they could to keep on providing services with the building closed. And they were constantly looking for new ideas as to how to make sure that people were able to get the materials. And they were, it really, every time they would come to us and share with us the different programs that they were trying, one of the things they had was called Walk to Read. And each one of the libraries had storybooks up along the edge of the libraries, and so kids could go by and they could read that. But they were also, you could still check out books, but the books, once they came in, they had a whole system to make sure that the books were laid out, because at that time we thought that possibly the COVID could be on surfaces. And so anyway, I think that they did everything that they possibly could to maintain those services, even though they had to close the doors.
Thank you, Cynthia.
We wanted to touch a little bit on the central library location, the original location. I think where are we starting with this one now, Aaron?
I think we're at, Marisa, did you take that question first or did you, Ray? I think Ray did. We're on Marisa.
Marisa's first.
Marisa's first.
Just wanted to ask, what is your take on the former location of the central library? And then we're going to talk about Stevens Ranch after that, but just wanted to know what your position is on the decision to not site this over on Highway 20, off Highway 20.
Yeah, so I haven't been immersed in this for years like Cynthia and Ray have, so I'm just getting up to speed on a lot of these things. But I think it's a missed opportunity. That was it seemed like a good spot, accessible to people. So I'm not sure that I have much more to say about it than that. I do like the, for reasons I spoke about before, I do like the idea of the Stevens Ranch location. I think just because I said, Bend is growing out that way. There are many developments currently in the works or slated to be in the works out that way. And, as I mentioned, East Bend has been very underserved over the years. And I think that it's a really great opportunity that things are coming together as they are in East Bend. I'm drifting a little bit off topic, but the city is focused on livability, walking paths, biking paths. There's the Reed, the new complex down at South Reed, where there's going to be a brewery, and there's a lot of activity and life going on over there. It seems out of the way right now, but I think we are growing into that, and it's going to be a very logical point coming up here in the next few years. And like I mentioned, that is where families can afford to buy houses. And if you talk about getting to the library, where sidewalks and bike paths are coming right into that area. Connectivity, kids can e-bike there. There's a whole high desert middle schools right there, as where my son goes. I think it's the people who are seeing that location, they have a vision for where Bend is growing, and I think that it's in a good place.
Okay, I think it's fair to, I sort of in my mind parse these two questions out, but I totally think the way you went one into the other is appropriate. So Cynthia, let's hear from you. What's your take on the former location and now the Stevens Road location, ranch location?
Sure. Actually, I loved the former location. And one of the reasons I did was because I did feel it was kind of like the center of the county, and being from Redmond, and I have to be honest, when I serve on the board, I have a tendency to lean more towards thinking about the communities a little bit outside of Bend. It's really important to me to make sure that our communities are receiving the services they need. So I was really excited about that location. I was disappointed when we weren't able to follow through, but what we ended up doing, I think, was great, because I agree with exactly what Marisa said. I remember when the hospital, when St. Charles was being decided to be built in Bend, and people all said, "Oh my gosh, that's so far out of town." Well, it's right in town now. So that's exactly, as Marissa says, that's exactly what's going to happen with the Central Library located at Stevens Ranch as well. I think it's going to be a great location, and we do, as a library, we still own the property on Roble Road, and at some point in time, I hope that maybe we are able to actually put a library out there to service that aspect, that portion of the community.
Ray, your turn.
Well, let me state, it's never been the location of a central library. It's always been a question of the size. So we are required to build a central library because of the bond measure. We have to do it. But we never really defined what a central library is in the bond measure. Reading the bond measure carefully, all it says is the only distinguishing characteristic of a central library that distinguishes it from all of our other libraries is a central processing facility. Every other library has exactly what the central library is promised to have, except for the central processing facility. My point has always been, yeah, North's location was great, except it's outside the city limits. It's outside the UGB. If we wanted to build there, we could work with the city of Bend to develop an area plan. It's been what, 2 years now? 2020, we passed the bond. I'm told that the city is now thinking about an area plan for that section of town. It would be great. We own the property because we bought it, paid the bond back for the purchase. Like Cynthia says, we could build a community library there. It'd be great. It's always been the size of the library that people have been, well, concerned about, and I have been concerned about. The same thing holds for the southeast location. Bend definitely needs an East Bend library. Over 10 years ago, we decided Bend needed an East Side library. We just weren't sure where the city was going to make it grow. So we leased the library facility. Well, the usage on it absolutely shows we were right. That is the dead center location for the entire East Side. Northeast, East, Southeast. Everybody goes to that one. My feeling is we should build a smaller, something other than 100,000 square foot for a processing facility, essentially. Let's build 2 community libraries. Permanent East Bend. We have enough money left over to build a North Bend, a Northwest Bend, which would serve everybody better. And we'd even have about, if we built those to say, 30,000 square feet, downtown is 38,000. Those are 2 really good sized libraries that can serve large population centers. That would take care of
How many
Bend.
square feet are needed for a processing?
Excuse me?
How many square feet are needed for the processing facility portion?
It's an automated piece of equipment. We saw the first one I ever saw was at Chappell Hill, North Carolina, when I went to visit our son and our grandkids. That's kind of cute. I would say it occupies maybe, smaller than my living room, much smaller.
So you're saying that because of that piece of machinery is so small, it's really, are you saying that gives you the flexibility with this bond to build a library of basically any size you wish?
Actually, our bond attorney explained everything to us, what we must do and cannot do.
Right.
We could actually, it gives us a great deal of flexibility, the language.
Okay.
We could take downtown Bend, the first floor, which is as you enter on the right side, it's all staff, mailing rooms, processing. Those are already planned to be moved out. we could take part of that as a central processing facility. The machine will fit in easily there already. And by doing
Okay.
that, we could just call downtown Bend the central library.
That's what I wanted. That's what I was curious about. And in fairness to the other, Ray, in fairness to the other candidates, I'd like to just ask a question I hadn't intended to, but we'll just throw it to everybody. Do you believe that that vision of not having these funds go to a single large central library, do you think that's what the voters, do you believe that's what the voters had thought, that they were voting on a large single library? Or do you believe that they thought they were voting on merely a processing area? And Marisa, let me start with Ray.
Okay. No, I don't think they thought they were voting for a central processing area. What I think they voted for, I mean, you've read the bond as well as I have.
Well, I also read the campaign materials.
Yeah, but the bond is what we legally have to do. And you and I both know there's campaign materials out there, but when the people go to vote, they pretty much read the voter pamphlet, the last thing they do. We promised them everything for their communities. There was going to be a central library, undefined in size or location. There was going to be a new Redmond library of substantially greater size. We didn't say anything about tearing down the Jesse Hill Library to do that. We promised them upgrades and remodels to Lapine, Sisters, and Sun River. They were all like that. And then we promised East Bend. We don't really know what people were voting for in that bond measure. There were too many things in there. So to say they did vote for a single processing center, I can't say that.
Okay.
To say they voted for
Marisa, let me ask the other candidates. Marisa, do you believe that that voters were confused about what they were voting for, or do you think they had a vision for what they thought those bond funds were going to be used for? You're muted.
I think they absolutely had a vision for what the bond funds were going to be used for. It's written in the third paragraph of the bond measure. The bond funds would pay for the design and construction of a central library that would provide a discovery center for children to learn and play, substantial space for an expanded book and materials collection, flexible community and small business spaces for learning, creativity and collaboration, a space for larger programs and events, and an efficient book material processing and distribution center to serve all the libraries in Deschutes County. And it goes on to say it would significantly increase the size of Redmond Library, provide for children's discovery, learning spaces, also upgrading East Bend, upgrading Downtown Bend, Lapine Sisters, and Sun River Library. So I do think that because I did vote for this, we did know what we were voting for. It's laid out pretty explicitly as a large community resource with multiple uses and offerings for people.
Okay, Cynthia, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay. I think I can answer it. I do not know what was in the voters' minds. I can't read people's minds. However, I do agree with exactly what Marisa said. I think that the library, I know I was one of the people who went out and campaigned about it. So I do believe that everything that was laid out in the voters' pamphlet, that the staff and the people who went out and talked to the communities, talked to community members about what was the vision for the bond. I felt like if you were reading, if you were listening, if you went to one of those meetings, then yes, you should have walked away with a good understanding of what it was you were voting for.
Thank you. I believe, Cynthia, you're going to take this next question first. There have been after voters passed this bond measure, and now it's been the central location was delayed. Now hopes are being pinned on Stevens Ranch. Do you believe that voters can feel confident that Stevens Ranch will fulfill the promise that voters had when they passed this measure?
So you're asking, I'm not totally sure I understand. So you're saying that because we moved the location from Roble Road to Stevens Ranch, that the voters would feel that there might be a difference between that? Is that what you're saying?
I think some people have expressed that they're concerned that the central library could now be a moving target, that it moved from Roble, that it's been told to them that it's Stevens Ranch. Can voters feel confident that it will not be moved from Stevens Ranch to a third or a fourth or a fifth location?
I see.
You know, do you feel
Okay, I
like
understand.
people can feel confident that they will, now that you guys have declared Stevens Ranch, get the central library that they were promised?
Well, that certainly is that's my position on the board. Yes, I do think that they could be assured that. The board's been voting on aspects of the building, what the architects have provided for us. We're moving forward with it. So yes, I do believe that that's what the voters can reliably say, yes, that's where it's going to be. That's about as much as I can read the future, but it's certainly the direction I want us to go as a board.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Ray, you have the question next. Do you need me to repeat it?
Yeah, please.
With the movement of the library from Roble Road to Stevens Ranch, can voters feel assured that they will receive their central library at Stevens Ranch, or should there be any fear in the electorate that the Stevens Ranch location is just number 2 in a list of moves that could happen in the future when we find we're looking at a third or fourth parcel?
Yeah, as I said, I think confusion and concern among the communities. One, it's not really the location, it's what are they getting. I mean, we didn't tell them 100,000 square foot library for now more than $138 million. I mean, 138 million out of the 195 million is getting to be a very big figure. I think that's more concern to people than where it's going to be located. It's what are they getting for the price? And as Marisa said, everything that was promised in the central library is already being provided by every single library in our system. There's nothing different except that processing center. The efficient distribution of materials, we definitely need to have that. But I don't think, and I don't think that people think, we need a 100,000 square foot elaborate building that's going to cost now over $138 million to do that part of it. I think what we've been saying is, look, we need to go back to the people and say, is this what you really thought you were voting for? And if it is, fine. How can we deliver that best? Where can we?
Are you, Ray? So are you suggesting that you want to go back to voters and reopen the bond measure?
Not reopen. We can't reopen the bond measure.
Right.
But we should, we're at a tipping point, but we're at a point now where I'm saying we should pause. We've been almost like a headlong rush to find a place to put this big building. The size of the lot is determined by the size of the building. People are concerned about the size of the building and what it's going to cost. Let's pause.
Okay.
Go back.
Right.
We spent 3.5% of the budget for this building so far. Let's take a step back, go back to the public, maybe get our public advisory committee back together, find out what the people really, really think about this topic only, not about Redmond, not about the other libraries. Let's
I
ask them.
understand. Thank you, Ray. Oh, but in closing, you're saying it that this essentially could mean that Stevens Road would not necessarily be the location that you would build this facility. If you convene the committee and they moved it, let's say you convene the committee and they said, hey, we're hitting pause, let's move, then Stevens Road might not be the place where the central library is built.
I'm thinking Stevens Road is an ideal location for a community library for Southeast Bend.
Okay.
That would, because that's going to grow, like Marisa said. I live here. We know it's going to grow. That would be a great location for a community library. Is it do we really want to build a 100,000 square foot, $138 million library? Or can we do it better with a Stevens Road library and East Bend library?
Okay. Marisa, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yeah, just really quick.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Sure. It's a two-parter. With the fact that the library did not build at Roble and now has picked a second site at Stevens, can voters feel assured that they will get the library they were promised in the bond measure at Stevens Ranch? Or is this number 2 and then voters might be looking at number 3 or 4 down the line?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's time for them to be sure. I think that there's been a lot of dysfunction on this board and a lot of disinformation spread around, which is just not serving the community. The community voted on this bond measure, which clearly lays out, what we would be getting is the central library with all the amenities that I spoke about before. The fact that it's 100,000 square feet, I'm not sure why that's relevant. The fact that it's X amount of 138,000 or $138 million, it is the pinnacle project in this bond measure. Of course, it's going to be the majority of the funding. The others are remodeling and expanding branches. So yes, this is going to take up a lot of the bond measure. My kids are growing up without this because when did we vote on this? 2 years, 3 years ago now, almost, and we're still, trying to figure out what to do. I think that the time is now to work together. In my role as the communications director at the Deschutes River Conservancy, I work every day in a collaborative environment. I have every vested member of the community, every vested stakeholder in water, which is you think libraries are contentious, water is 1,000 times more contentious. And we bring everyone to the table, we talk it through, and we make consensus-based decisions. It looks like there was consensus on this a few years ago, and then splinter groups kind of came off and there no longer was consensus. I just think that our community voted for this. We put the money together for this, and it's time to make it happen and deliver on that promise.
I just have one quick follow-up for Ray, because I'm looking at the election results. Looks like 63,000 people voted in favor of this. That's 63,000 votes in support of the design and construction of a library, central library. I want to know upon what evidence, besides the conversations of the board, do you believe that the public doesn't support this now?
Oh, good question, Nicole. So I've been on this board, since '98. We have I've never seen the amount of public participation at the library board meetings, both pro and con on this issue. I've never seen so many emails being sent to the library board, so many letters to the editor, to both the source and the bulletin, as on this issue. The only other issue I've ever seen being nearly contentious is when we made our internet policy for children's internet usage. The mere fact that people are so concerned that they will actually come to our board meetings that they will actually send letters to the media and to the board suggests in my mind that there's something wrong. We cannot just ignore that the bond measure passed 52 to 48. That same election, there were 6 other money measures for libraries. The slowest one passed 60-40. Actually, I think it's 58.9 something. This is what you expect because people love their library. They will pass library bonds because they love their library. It should have been up in the upper 50s. It was low. The only election we had that actually put the single issue of community libraries versus a central library was the election we had for the library board seat in South County. And there Ann Ness ran for community libraries. She defeated the sitting board president almost 60-40. Now, to my mind,
isn't there like a will of the majority here? I mean, we still have, certainly you have people who voted no,
absolutely.
but you have a majority who voted yes. And that's, to me, that's public process. I'm just trying to understand how after a public process happens, and of course, I know there was years of public input about what to bring to the bond. You know, I'm confused about, yes, of course, people are, you know, certain people won't like it, but, you know, if we don't have a majority, what do we have?
You're absolutely right. And I support that. You know, you win by 50.1, that's a win. All right. My point is, we had so many promises in that library ballot. I don't know, any statistician was going to tell you, you don't know which one people voted for, why they voted for the bond measure. People in La Pine voted for the La Pine Library. Same thing in Sisters, Redmond. I mean, Sun River. But to say that they voted for a central library, some of them probably thought, I'm never going to use it, but I want improvements to La Pine.
Cynthia, do you want? Thanks, Ray. Cynthia, would you like to respond to that as a sitting board member?
Number one, I'd like to say, you know, Ray's brought this up time and again about needing to have more community input. This project had 8 years of community input. I mean, it was before I was even on the board. And once I came on the board, we even had more. I went to numerous meetings where people from the community of Bend were, where people in Sisters would come, people in Redmond would come, and they would see and they would hear and they would ask questions. So I don't agree with him that there has not been community input. I think there's been lots of community input. I do think that the division that's happened on the board, unfortunately, has fed an aspect of our population that maybe is unhappy with things. I don't know. I don't totally understand. I personally think we need to move forward. We voted for the bond. It passed. I don't care how much it passed by. It passed. The fact that it passed tells me the voters want what they voted for. And so that's what I think we need to do.
Okay, I think we should move on in the interest of time. We have 2 more questions. Hopefully we can get through them rather quickly. I think we are asking Cynthia to start. This one really is more of like something we're seeing nationally, but we want to just ask about your take on this. Cynthia, what's your take on book bans and censorship?
Okay, well, first of all, I was a teacher for 28 years, so I have a real strong feeling about that. I also owned a bookstore in downtown Redmond for 8 years. And so the whole idea of book challenges is it's always been around. People have always, in fact, one of the things that we celebrated in our bookstore was Banned Book Week. But my thinking of what's going on right now with these challenges is that, number one, I believe that parents do have rights. Parents most definitely have rights to be concerned about what their children are reading. But more than that, I think parents have responsibilities. And it is not the library's responsibility to determine what your child will read and what the child won't read. I raised 3 daughters here. We used to, when my girls were little, we all through growing up here, we always would go to the library. That was my responsibility to see what my kids were reading. If my children came to me and they said, well, I want to check out this book, or I want to see this movie or something, if it was something that I was concerned with, the way I handled it was to say, okay, I will sit down and you and I will read it together, or you and I will watch this together, so that I made sure that they were understanding whatever the material was. That was just how I did it. That doesn't mean that that was the right way. It was just my way. And I think that that's exactly what needs to happen. This idea that libraries are sharing material that's inappropriate for kids. No, libraries are sharing material that people want. You may not like that book, and that's fine. Then you do not have to check it out, and you need to make sure that your child is not checking it out if that's what you want to do. But my child has the right to check out that book if they want to. So that's my take on it, basically.
Thanks. Thank you, Cynthia.
Ray, you are up next for that question. What's your take on book bans and censorship?
Censorship is a 4-letter word, right? Let me tell you, I think this is part of parenting, as Cynthia says. Parents, I can understand people's concerns that their kids are being exposed to inappropriate material. But what's inappropriate? Well, that's part of parenting. You're supposed to teach your kids. You should go to the library with your kids. You should know who your kids' friends are. You should know what they're doing outside, right? Just having a kid does not make you a parent. That's pretty clear. Now, having said that, I do have a concern. 2 concerns. One is the increasing number of library boards and school boards that are being taken over on the single issue of banned books. And it seems to be predominantly on LGBTQ plus books and racial equity. I think that's wrong, but it's happening. The question is, how do we meet this challenge? I don't think we just sit back in there and say, you're wrong, you can't do this. Let me tell you a little story. I'll try and make it short. I said the previous biggest public input into libraries was when we had the children's internet policy. This is way before Cynthia was there. Question was, parents were saying, you're putting computers into the children's library. Some guy's going to sit next to my kid, bring up pornography or something, and my kid's going to see it. They're not going to know what it is, but they're going to see this thing, and they're going to say, Mom, what the heck is this thing about, right? And the people on the left were saying, freedom to read. Like we say, books are on the shelf. Computers are in the library. Kids have a right to use computers, especially young adult children. What we did was we sat down. It took us almost 2 months to deliberate, educate ourselves, see what we could do, what we could not legally do. What we decided was children's library computers are only for children. An adult in there has to be with a child. You can't go in there by yourself. You have to go with a kid. And the kid has to have a library card, and you have to have a library card. And interestingly, parents can now put a block on their children's library card for computer usage up until the age of 16. That's the age of emancipation in Oregon. Over the age of 16, if you have a library card, you can go upstairs to use computers. We have certain rules on what you can use. If you violate that, the librarian will kick you out or take away your card. After we made that decision in public, people on the extreme right came up to me and said, we're glad you're our guy on the board. People on the left came up to me and said, we're glad you're our guy on the board. And I went, either I'm really crazy or we actually did something right by actually sitting down, educating ourselves and saying, what are we legally able? What can we do legally? What's best to meet the needs of the people who are concerned? My big concern right now, though, is not the written material. It's graphic novels. There's a big difference between a graphic novel and a written book. When 80% of people are visual learners. A young kid could wander upstairs into the library, take a book off the shelf, look at it and go, whoa, what is this? They won't even know the words, but they're going to see the pictures and it's going to register. We have a problem. I don't know how we're going to handle this. We have expert librarians who actually select the books that go onto our shelves and those that don't go onto our shelves and those that are recalled from the shelves.
Ray,
I
we
think-
gotta move to the next question. But
Well, we want to
thank
give
you.
Marisa a chance to.
Oh, yeah,
answer
I'm
that.
sorry, not the next question. Marisa, can you, do you need to repeat?
Nope, I got this one.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's the whole book banning idea is really shifting a parent's responsibility to a community resource, which I think is inappropriate. I think if you have issues with the book, you need to be a parent and deal with it within your own family. You know, I kind of relate it to Netflix. Like Netflix isn't banning movies because certain parents don't like that movie. It's all up there. And you as a parent are responsible for monitoring what your child is taking in. And so I think, yeah, it's not something I think the library should have to deal with. And that said, I find the library to be a wonderful resource for learning about what's going on in our world. When things happen like Martin Luther King Day, or my kids are having questions about different things that they're hearing in school, one of the first things I do is I go check out a bunch of books and we read through them. We've read through How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi, all the big topics that are coming up for kids that they're having to absorb. I think that the library plays a really crucial role in providing learning material at an appropriate level for kids to learn about that. And if I were a parent that did not want to emphasize that with my children, if I felt differently about that, I wouldn't go check out those books and read them to them. So that's how I would deal with that.
thanks, Marisa. Okay, last question for you guys. This is really campaign finance kind of question. Ray, we'll start with you. I know these races are traditionally pretty low level, but could you just quickly tell us who your biggest financial supporter in the race is? And we'll just go around the clock.
My cat. No, we have.
I
mean,
not
literally,
emotional. So we're not talking about emotional support.
No, I'm talking about finance. I mean, I don't think I've spent anything except my time.
Okay.
That is, when you get to my age, time is your biggest asset. I mean, that's your number one asset. And I'm willing to spend my time, not only campaigning, but to actually serve on this and all the other boards that I serve on for the benefit of the community. So that's where my spending is.
Okay. Marisa?
I'm just starting my campaign, so it's all coming out of my checkbook at this point. The registration fees and whatnot. I will be fundraising for just name recognition because I'm running against Ray, who people already know, and I just need to make sure I get my name out there so people understand who I am. So yeah, I'll be taking donations, but as of yet, there aren't any in the hopper. So I'm happy to comment on that later when I have an answer. So.
Thank you. Cynthia?
Yeah, I'm kind of like Ray. It's been mostly time. I purchased some yard signs and that came out of my own checkbook. And so I don't have anybody who's backing me financially at all. Hopefully people are backing me emotionally.
Well, you need a cat, Cynthia. There's your like Ray.
I don't have a cat. That's my problem.
Get a dog, even better.
Yeah, dogs are better emotional support, I'll say.
Oh yeah, much better.
That's true.
You go out to take out the garbage and you come back and they go, you're back, I love you.
Yeah. Speaking of, it's Friday night. It's time for happy hour for all of us after this discussion. We just thank you so much for taking the time to share your ideas with us.
Yeah, and thank you guys. Really appreciate your commitment to community service, and obviously we're deeply in your debt. So appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for publishing the source for so long. Very much
Yeah.
so.
Thank you, Ray.
And thanks for making our voices available to the community. I think it's a great thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have our voices and our ideas heard. Thank you.
You bet. Appreciate it.
Go
Thanks,
see
you
your
guys.
families.